games are fun and life is fun, and games are hard, life is hard. And those are
Yeah.
true statements. And I think what makes any of in all of this manageable is finding the fun, the joy, the passion in it. If something's not fun, you need to find a way to make it fun. Otherwise, you're just stuck in this infinite loop.
Welcome to Life is the Game, hosted by yours truly, Alexandra Nicole Stone. Get ready to uncover the secrets to mastering your destiny, becoming the main character in your life, and embracing a life filled with meaning and joy. Ready? Let's play. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life is the Game, where you'll learn how to play your life as a game, take control of your destiny, and hopefully have more fun in the process. I'm your host, Alexandra Nicole Stone, and I'm super excited for our guest today, Chandler Quinton. I'm going to go ahead and read his bio. Chandler Quinton is a longtime agency entrepreneur with a primary focus on ushering in a new golden era of video advertising. Since 2009, Chandler has founded and exited multiple agencies in the marketing and advertising space and has been lucky enough to execute award-winning video for brands like Lego, Google, Bose, and Square. Chandler's team has worked all over the map, from helping turn Lego into a #1 brand on YouTube with a 200-plus episode series, Rebriculous, to launching multiple startups out of Google's Area 120 incubator. Currently, Chandler and longtime creative co-founder Brian Bruzy are focusing on Video Brothers, the video advertising agency quickly gaining recognition for making B2B more fun and less boring, and essentially breaking LinkedIn with entertaining content for amazing brands that are on a quest to cut through the noise, stand out, and win. Thanks for joining me, Chandler.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this, Alex.
Yeah, me too. It's actually, I wanted to touch up on how we met, because I actually met Chandler because I saw one of the ads for Video Brothers on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is cool. Nobody's doing edgy, funny stuff on LinkedIn. And so I automatically liked and subscribed, and Chandler reached out to me. We were thinking about maybe a potential partnership, but we just kept in touch, and I'm super excited that it led us to where we are today. So that's kind of funny how life works like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's fun when you put out some content and you get some cool people on the other end responding to it. And the response has been incredible. But to meet you and other people just like you is just like, it's what we get up for in the morning. So thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, love it. So since today, since the podcast is Life is a Game, I've been really curious about kind of what games people love growing up or even in your adult life. So did you ever have a game that really resonated with you and has it impacted your life positively?
Yeah. So there is an odd category of games, the point and click adventure game.
Ooh.
And there's some really famous examples out there that a lot of old school people know and recognize. But the one that sucked me into this type of game was a game called Monkey Island. And it was actually originally produced by LucasArts. So
Okay.
the company that everyone knows and loves. And this is the type of game where you have a character and you're walking around finding objects and clues, and you have to do actions like pick up the rock and then move the rock over here. And it's this cool pirate adventure. It's really fun. And it's just a super cool game. So if anybody out there listening has played Monkey Island or any game in that series, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a game that teaches you how to make good decisions and solve puzzles. And I think that really sucked me into kind of gaming in general was that game.
I love that you bring up Monkey Island. So Monkey Island is actually a game that I think someone gave it to me when I was way too young. So first I was like, what is this game? I didn't understand the premise of the game. And I think I put it on pause for a few years. And after like growing up, I came back and I was like, oh my gosh, this game is super cool. Like I'm like solving a mystery. I'm like building a puzzle here. So I love that you bring that up. What specifically about Monkey Island kind of resonated with you where you're able to sort of apply it to your day-to-day life?
No, it's a great question. Monkey Island is all about making decisions, right? And being strategic and remembering details. And, maybe when I was a young, kid at the time playing it, I didn't realize that those are actually stepping stones to a good kind of framework for how to live life, right? You always need to be on the quest for breadcrumbs and clues. And in that game, you have to talk to people and say certain things to get certain responses or get a certain action to happen. And that is like quite literally like how I think life works is you need to say the right things at the right time to get either what you're looking for or another breadcrumb or another clue or a door for a side quest to be unlocked. So I think that's how it translated. Now it's weird because I didn't think about that game specifically until you just asked me, but I'm now realizing that that game is like kind of how the interface in my brain works. You know, pick up the water bottle, go open the door, talk to the person. So that's so funny. Oh, we're nerding out so hard already. I love it.
I love it. I love it. So you mentioned side quests, and I know a little bit about your history, and I love your side quests that you want in your life. So can you please share with the audience kind of your amazing journey that you've gone on to sort of get to where you are today, and really about how you started?
Yeah. So in high school, I was one of those kids that, you know, kind of fell out of sports because I realized that playing a guitar was way cooler and people seem to enjoy, you know, oh, wow, Chandler plays guitar. That's so cool. So I started a band and I was in multiple bands throughout high school. And some of those bands actually were kind of going somewhere, which was crazy. So on like a Wednesday night, I drive down to the Webster Theater in Connecticut and play a sold out show with Panic, you know, opening up for Panic at the Disco out of nowhere. And I'm just like a, you know, 17-year-old kid who has like no idea what he's doing. And I truly thought that I was going to be a rock star. I was like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm just going to tour with this band. And like, that's going to be my life. And, you know, luckily my parents kind of were fair but firm about it and convinced me to go to college. And I continued kind of my directionless, you know, path probably during my like freshman year. I didn't really know what I wanted to study, what I wanted to major in. I felt business would be a great thing to focus on because it's general and broad and, you know, it's kind of maybe it's a little bit better than a political science degree. Let's just be fair there. So anyways, there was an unexpected detour during my college career. Now I definitely started getting interested in some of the marketing classes. I think that was cool to like be able to convince somebody to buy a product or buy a service. And that was a little intriguing. And I had this college advisor who I only met one time. And I don't know if they knew anything about me. I didn't know anything about them. But at our school, Drexel University, where I went undergrad and got my MBA there, they have a co-op program, and it might be called something at different schools, but that's when for 6 months out of the year, you actually get a full-time real job. So you get real experience, you're paid money, it's real responsibilities. And then after that's over, you go back to classes for 6 months and then you go through 2 or 3 co-op programs, depending on how you've structured your schedule. So this advisor, I just went into the office. They're like, okay, so like, what are you thinking about doing? And I have no idea. Like, I don't know what I'm even interested in. And this woman, she suggested, she's like, well, there's an opening for a strategist at Razorfish. Do you know what Razorfish is? And I was like, no, like, what is that? Some sort of like fishing company? Like, what is this thing? And at the time, Razorfish was the biggest and most well-known digital agency in the world. They were owned by Microsoft at that time. And all this woman said was, if you work at Razorfish, that's like going to Harvard on your resume in terms of the marketing and advertising world. Mm-hmm. And that was all I needed to hear to go like, well, that sounds great because I definitely don't go to Harvard. So being directionless, like this might give me an advantage. This might be a little cheat code, right? So, you know, intrigued by, you know, this kind of thought of like, wow, that sounds really compelling. I applied and I showed up for the interview, totally admitting I had zero experience in this. But I think my personality and how I was talking to these people and just being open-minded to what their idea of what a strategist could be really aligned with me. And, you know, next thing you know, I got the offer from Razorfish and I'm working at an agency. Day one, I remember walking in there, the walls were neon green, they had funky furniture. And I was like, this is the craziest place. This is so cool. And the energy of the place, you know, the number of ideas like flowing and just like the hustling that was going on and just like the vibe of the place was like vibrating with creative energy. It made me feel like I found my path. I found my home. I knew it almost instantly on day one. I was like, I want to do this forever. This is cool. I think my personality fit in. And before you know it, I was pitching, you know, Neutrogena and J&J on like stupid app ideas. Like, you know, it's like, it's going to take a picture of your face and identify where your zits are and tell you which products you're going to use to clear up your face. And I just couldn't believe I was doing these sorts of things at, you know, 21, 22 years old. And it was an incredible experience. You know, had I questioned that person's advice, I have no idea where I would have gone. And I didn't talk to anybody else. I just was like, sure, I'll apply. I applied to that one job and there it is. And I think it was one of those moments looking back, like I think the universe was doing me a solid. I think the universe was pointing me in the right direction. And it brought a lot of that past stuff to the forefront. Getting up on stage and playing guitar and singing in front of
Yeah.
people, you need that courage, you need that personality to do so. And that really works well in strategy because you're pitching, you're presenting, you're talking to clients, you're account managing stuff. And I think all those skills were kind of like coming into place. And that made me feel like at home and like I've unlocked a new level, right? Talking about game mentality here. And it did feel like I kind of like was now popping in like, number 2 of the series here. I was like, okay, this is it. Yeah. So that's kind of that pivotal moment.
And what were your feelings kind of going throughout that process? And I think this is really important, especially for kind of people early in their career or still in college, because I know I had a very similar story as you, where I was a comms major. I was just like, okay, I just need to do something that gives me a lot of flexibility and freedom. And then I was actually working in nightlife and promotions because I was like, oh, I love raving and I want to throw festivals and things like that, because I was also like rock and roll energy as well. But I also felt like super lost. So can you maybe share your feelings that you were going through at that point? Were you feeling FOMO? Did you feel like you were taking a risk? What did you have like insecurities come to the surface as you were navigating that experience in your such an early stage of your career?
Oh yeah. I mean, going even back to high school when you're walking down the halls and someone's like, oh, I just got into, Stanford and I'm going to be a dentist or something. And you're just like, oh, like, I don't even know what jobs there are out there. I'm too busy learning how to play power chords decently. And I think that there was a lot of like almost insecure fear, like, oh, like, am I not good enough for the real world? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no direction. No one's really guiding me. I have no mentors. I have no one to look up to. And it's daunting when you hear, everyone talking about their plans and what they're going to do and what they're excited about. And you kind of go like, do I just not fit in here? And that's really, that's a path that's really tough to get off of. And that continued in college. I mean, just imagine freshman year, you've been there, right? There's so many people that are they show up on day 1 and they're the best. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so behind. And what kind of got me out of that was, reminding myself that, believing, and this is something I talk about all the time, like you really need to believe in yourself. And I think that moment when I got that job at Razorfish, I kind of like, just like took a deep breath and was like, okay, this is cool. I can do this. Like, let me just rise to the occasion and let me make this my path. So that way, when I am in the hallway, I can say, well, I'm in advertising. You know what I mean? And really own that. And
I love that.
I really had to believe myself and get that mentality going. And that's kind of where I started really the positive thinking stuff and the self-talk stuff and all of those things that you can't rely on the outside world to do for you. You really need to do yourself. So.
It's almost like envisioning kind of an avatar version of you. You're like, okay, I have this advertising persona. I came from rock and roll background. I've performed in front of stages filled with people and filled with audience members, right? I can do this. I can knock this out, right? And kind of hyping yourself up. I think doubling down on the belief in yourself is absolutely critical. And I'm in LA, I'm in Hollywood. Fake it till you make it is a real thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like the one thing I hope people realize, especially if they're not in a great spot, is like, I believe, and I've seen this, I know the proof, and I know other people that believe this too, but you and you alone are in control of your own universe. So your avatar, like you actually have the power to take that and go places and do things and accomplish stuff. And I think that's really important to just believe that. And if you believe that, you've just already taken step 1. And then you can kind of go from there. And it feels really good once you kind of believe that and convince yourself that it's real.
Yeah. Because once you start taking action towards those things, it's like proof that, oh my gosh, wait, it's no longer this theoretical thing in my mind, but I'm actually doing it. I'm actually a podcast host, right? I've been doing this for a while. Like it's becoming real. It becomes less of a far distant version of you. So I absolutely love that.
I was going to ask you, like, do you feel sometimes like you don't even realize you're doing something? Like you've been podcasting for a long time, and do you ever go like, whoa, I'm podcasting, like I'm doing it. Like you almost like forget that you're on that path. Does that ever happen to you?
Yes, totally. I think we're our harshest critic. And so kind of the reason I've even started this podcast is for me, it's selfish. It's for me to sort of overcome this negative voice in my head that's telling me like, oh, I can't do this, or you're not good enough. I'm even like going back to my first couple of episodes. I'm like, oh, this is crap. I hate this. This is not good enough for the public. But I'm like, oh my gosh, but you're doing it. You're at least you're
Yeah.
getting to a point that you can even look back at what you did maybe even 4 weeks ago and say, oh my gosh, whatever I'm doing now, it's so much better. And it's really taken the people in my life kind of saying like, you're doing it and being proud of me and stuff like that in order for me to realize that I'm not an imposter. I'm doing it, and everybody started out like this, right? No, nobody just started doing something like already knowing whatever they were doing. So just remembering
100%.
that. Yeah. You kind of talked about maybe like a little bit of a turning point you experienced at Razorfish, but I'm really sort of fascinated with kind of that point in people's lives where they realize maybe like, oh my gosh, I'm in control of my own destiny, or I have free will, or I can actually make decisions for myself. I think sometimes it takes us a little bit of time to actually come to the realization that we can do those things for ourselves. Can you maybe share where that point in time was for you?
Yeah, I have a very specific story on this, and I love telling people about it. This all ladders up to like, believing in yourself and that you're in control. And my late mother always told me to be positive, believe in yourself, be optimistic, and help others. And if you do all those things, like magical things can happen. And I had a magical moment in my life that really, I think it was like level 3 of this whole thing, right?
Yes.
So this all clicked for me when my company was invited to pitch Lego a brand new YouTube series. And this was in 2017. And they were looking to make, a very generic UGC type of show that was like, hey, what's up? I'm Chaz92. We're going to build a fire truck today. And when we received the brief, the idea admittedly was lackluster. I mean, from a marketing perspective, looking back, and I wasn't even thinking this way then, is that the audience was already making that stuff, right? So they were going to just be competing with their audience that's already doing it. And
Yeah.
we just felt that it was boring. And also we're like, we're never going to win this thing. Like, we're a tiny company. They don't know who we are. We were just probably invited as a courtesy. But after envisioning how we would handle it, me and my co-founder, Brian, we were talking about this, like, we really need to wow them. And even if we don't win it, we need to make an impact and be memorable here. So like, what do we do? And Brian thinks the same way I do. He envisions things a lot, and we do this together a lot. And I had this strong feeling in my imagination about what this could be. And, take their idea, put it aside, and come up with something new. And I could just like see this show happening. I could see what we wanted to do. We wanted to have like jokes and pranks and interstitials, and like have it be more of like a late night show for kids where we were just
Love
doing
it.
fun stuff with the product. And I had just such a strong feeling that this was going to happen. And I just had this like inclination that if I can just change the conversation, if I can just change one person in this room's mind that this is an interesting idea, then that might be a step forward. And I just have to go for it. And we
Yeah.
can all remember, we're all fans of Mad Men, I'm sure, if we're in the
Yeah.
marketing space. And Don Draper used to say, let's just change the conversation. And that's
Yeah.
kind of exactly what I wanted to do. So we pitched them this wild idea. No brand had ever attempted anything like this before. And then next thing you know, we are making the most successful branded show on YouTube of all time. And after that pitch, I had the vision before we told we were awarded the project. I just had this vision that it already happened. Like, I felt like in my body, in my soul, that was like, it already happened. I didn't feel great about the pitch, to be honest with you. I didn't like walk out of there being like, we nailed it. But I just like had this feeling. I was like, I've been here before. It's a little deja vu. Like, we've already done this. Like, I've already done this thing. Thought about it every day. And then maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later, they called us up, said we got the job. And I really believed then in that moment that I don't want to say manifesting. I don't know if I think that word's been a little like trashed a little bit. And I don't know if it has the same meaning, but like, I felt like I created that universe and that opportunity, and I made it happen. So I think once you realize you're in control of your own destiny, like for real, it's that magic moment. And I think you can literally do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah. I think even if we want to like move away from manifesting, I use that word a lot, but I also understand what you're saying too. It's just kind of like, I have one life and I choose how I play the game. And I think for you, especially, having that rock and roll kind of background, a little bit rebellious. Also, advertising is, yes, I love it. Advertising is a little spicy. I totally resonate with that because I love making bold marketing choices too. I'm like, sometimes I'd rather go big and go home than do something, stale and boring and just that everybody else is doing. So I think for you, it's just like, if I'm going to go out there and I'm going to show up in the world and I'm going to take action and put my name on something, I want it to be something different. So I think you were just you had such a strong visual of what that was. And you're like, if it's not this, then I don't want it, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think you get out what you put in. I mean, that's how games work too. You got to put effort in and you got to play the game to get the reward out, the prize or the advancement that you're looking for. And it's so true. I mean, that's just how life works. It's like physics, right? You get, you
Yeah.
get out what you put in. Every action has a reaction. It's just, yeah, it's cool to talk about for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to just go through a game just like going through all the quests, right? We're just like, okay, I'm going to have this objective without exploring any corner of the map. I don't know. I have shiny objects like problems. I'm like, okay, oh, what's over there? Like, let me flip this rock. Or how can we take down this opponent in a way that's kind of exciting or exhilarating, Or maybe I can just sneak around and assassinate everybody without being seen, right? Like, how can I make this gameplay more interesting? Because there's always the easy, more boring way, or just like, okay, I'm just going to run away from everybody and avoid confrontation. Or I'm going to take on this challenge and make my character the strongest or the best version of it possible, right?
Yeah, totally. I totally get that.
Let's segue into sort of kind of looking at life as a game. And I know maybe in your life and throughout your journey, you weren't thinking necessarily, okay, how can I live my life in a game-like way? But I think there's things like failing or taking risks, right? Or embracing sort of the sweet side quests of life that teach you certain types of mindsets that you look at life through. So what are these sort of kind of game-like mindsets that you've had on your journey?
Yeah, this is an awesome question. Mindset wise, I think that, in games, this is especially true, but, to believe that there are multiple permutations of the path that's in front of you, just like a game, I think that's really important. You could go left in the game, you could go right in the game, you could go up, down, but 9 times out of 10, you are absolutely heading towards the predetermined destination of whatever that game might be. So you're actually going to end up where the game wants you to go kind of by design. So when you can begin to start thinking in permutations and you can make more calculated decisions, you can be more thoughtful. And sometimes the best path isn't the most direct one. And I think being like cognizant of the journey itself is very important to the process of it. Like, it's worth going on side quests. It's worth pausing for a little bit and just kind of regrouping and things like that. And that's exactly what you do in games. And that's exactly what you do in life. You don't play a game 24/7, 365. You put it down for a little bit and you relax and you do something else and you come back to it, right?
Yeah.
I tell people this a lot about thinking in permutations. And I used to actually think it was like a problem. Like, I thought I had like something wrong with my mind. And I probably do.
I love it.
Be honest here. But when I think about something, I think about all the possible ways it could play out, what could happen, what the outcomes could be.
Yeah.
And that can be very daunting, right? It can be very overwhelming, especially when there's a lot of unknowns, because there's a lot more permutations than there are if there are less unknowns. And that was something I struggled with for a while, is just to like almost accept that that's how my brain works and try to modify that for just existing in day-to-day life. And I think that it's all about that mindset, that like, that's actually a good way to think, because you're considering all the options. You're considering what your action now, what repercussion that will have tomorrow or a week from now or a month from now, a year from now, et cetera. And I think that's like, I don't know, it's a cool thing, and anyone can do it. You just have to be more thoughtful. I think that's what it all comes down to. So let me see, my other thoughts on that are, I think that having a positive mindset is the number one thing that's free to do. Anybody can do it. It's not hard once you get the hang of it, but games are fun and life is fun, and games are hard. Life is hard. And those are true statements. And I think what makes all of this manageable is finding the fun, the joy, the passion in it. If something's not fun, you need to find a way to make it fun. Otherwise, you're just stuck in this infinite loop, right?
Yeah.
Might be game over, might be restart. I wrote a couple quips because I wanted to be in the gaming lexicon here with everybody.
I love it.
Yeah, in some cases, you're just surviving to the next checkpoint or end of the level or something like that. And in other cases, might be opening up doors and hallways and exploring opportunities you never expect. And
Yeah.
I don't think anybody with a bad attitude gets past the first level or the big
Yeah.
boss or anything like that. It's impossible. And you don't need to be cheery all the time and have a smile on your face and fake it, but like positivity isn't necessarily connected to happiness. It's just knowing that you are okay. You will be okay. There is something bigger here. And that is something positive to think about.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, I was talking to someone just the other day about kind of what I think success should actually mean is that life is filled with those sort of ups and downs. And I think success is your ability to surf those out and still maintain like a positive attitude. It's not like happiness, like you said, per se, but it's like, hey, it's not bad. Like this is just life and we're just going to keep moving forward and we're going to keep playing the game, right? We're going to have failures. We're going to take risks. Some of them are going to work out. Some of them are not, and sometimes things take longer than we want them to take. But success is that ability just to surf that out and still be consistent in who you are and not forget what your life and what your mission is about and keep pushing forward no matter what.
Yeah, I totally align with that. That's a beautiful statement for sure.
Yes. And I just wanted to highlight something you said, which I think should be one of my new taglines, which is life is fun, games are fun, life is hard, games are hard. So it's like ready, let's play. Yeah, that's amazing. I think one of the challenges that I'm facing is where I'm saying life is a game. People are like, this so idealistic, right? Life is hard, life is difficult. Well, I'm not saying it's going to be the minute you start saying, okay, what if life was a game? All of a sudden things are going to get easier. I'm just trying to say, okay, this is just a framework for you to start looking at your life, right?
Right.
And to get out of your body. It's like we're so caught up, right, in the first person. Oh my gosh, like living like animals. But if you take a second when you make a decision, say, okay, what if life was a game? You kind of get to step out of your body, have that third point perspective, and you can be like, what is the decision that I actually want to make? Right. And then what is it? Why am I not making that decision? Is it because of what society thinks? Because of what my family thinks? Because of the negative voice inside of my head? Right. So it's just a lens for you to be like, okay, this is what I actually like the true me really wants to do. If I were just to say, okay, we're going to do what I want. Like if this is a game, this is what I would decide. Okay. And then these are all the things holding me back. So it's just a framework for you to say, okay, why are these things holding me back? And are they really that important? Or did I just make them way more important than they're supposed to be? Right.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
And you were talking about permutations before. I forgot. I wanted to say something else, but there is a story that you have that I know from a previous podcast, kind of in between Razorfish and beginning your own agency. And a story at the bar. And I think, can you please share that? Because I think that's such an awesome story because I think there's both like risk and failure deeply woven into that moment, but you just decided to have that leap of faith, right? Because that was one of the permutations. You're like, you know what? The worst case scenario, it works out. Or like the best case scenario works out. The worst case scenario, they just say no. So could you please share that story with the audience?
Yeah, and by the way, I'm like very humbled that you listened to something else I was on and that story. At first, I was like, "What are you talking about?" But I was like, "Oh my god, I know exactly what it is." Yes. So at the end of my tenure at Razorfish, I was kind of linking up with a few buddies from high school that were kind of thinking about maybe starting an agency of some sort. And at this point, now I knew what an agency was, and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds really fun." To start an agency, you need a client. That's like the first thing you do. You have to have a client. A lot of agencies are started before or not until they have a client. And then all of a sudden you're an agency. So we're at the actual kind of like last day. So all the other people that also were from my school that were at Razorfish, we had a paid search guy. He's a good buddy of mine, Marshall. He's still in the space. It's really cool. A few other really awesome individuals. We all went out to this karaoke place. And so we were at this bar. There's a lot of loud noises going on. I'm just like chit chatting with this nice woman at the bar. And, we're asking each other what we do. And she's, she works at it was a cancer research kind of like nonprofit type of thing.
Mhm.
And I mentioned that, I was thinking about maybe starting an agency, and she's like, oh, Razorfish is pitching us on an app in a couple of weeks. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then like in that moment, I probably had 100 years of thoughts going on. Like I just had all this thinking going on. And I was like, wait a second, I want to start an agency. There's an open pitch happening. Maybe I can just see if I can get an invitation to this pitch. And that's what came out of my mouth. I was like, hey, like, would you mind if my agency presented you what we could do for you, when you guys are ready for it? And she just, without even question, she was like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll give me your email and we'll get it going. And then I remember like leaving that, sending an email to these friends of mine, like, hey, I just got a meeting for an iPhone app and we got to figure this out like this weekend. Cause next week we're going to, we're going to go pitch this team and see what happens. And I went for it. And that was the first client we ended up landing after they said no first. They said no first, then they came back. And that kind of kicked off like my agency career as an agency entrepreneur, I guess you can call it. I've done this a bunch of times, and that's how it all starts. It's like that first client that you get to believe in your vision, and then you turn one client into three into five, and you just keep going from there and hope that it never stops.
I think that story is so important. Like, I think if anyone can just really take away like an analogy or like that little clip from your life, it's so important because it's again like having that confidence in yourself and just going out there and trying it. I mean, this is the same concept you can take and apply to like asking someone out that you like, right? that can get you a relationship. It doesn't have to be, business oriented, but just having that mindset of like, okay, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to go out there. Or like just how I was talking to you, we were talking about something else. And I was like, you know what? He'd make a great podcast guest. And for some reason I was hesitating before. I was like, oh, maybe he's not. I just sent you the message and you're like, oh, I'm so excited. I'd love to do this. I was like, oh my gosh, that was like such a great reaction. I should do this more often. I should just, I'm like, why don't I just reach out to my connections on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I think you're cool. Let's hop on that podcast. Worst case to say, no, I'm sorry, not interested. Don't have the time. But or like a lot of people expect to know, but just like having fun and just, I would challenge people, even if it's like a big thing, like pitching yourself to somebody, or a smaller thing, like, maybe it's going on a fun vacation or asking that person out, right? Like just have that exercise that muscle because you never know what's going to happen. And I think that's been a big thing in my life where I'm like, things just work out for me in my life, but it's not that things just work out for me in my life. Is that I have a certain degree of confidence in myself. And when I go and I talk to people, I just talk about the things that I'm doing. And they're like, oh, hey, that sounds interesting. Like count me in, or like, let's see how we can collaborate. And that's kind of how that chain reaction of growth can start happening for you. If you're just a little bit bold and brave to put yourself out there.
What you just said remind me of something my mom always used to tell me and my sisters growing up. And we still all say this to each other. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. Hearing that, believing that, kind of digesting that is the most true statement ever. And you need to put yourself in the situation where you go for it. The worst that's going to happen is a no. But if you don't ask, you're going to get a no anyways. So you just got to roll the dice and go for it. Put yourself out there. And there's like some comfort in that, knowing that if you don't ask, the answer is always no, because that tells you that if you do ask, the answer is question mark. And that's what makes life as a game fun, is not knowing what's going to happen. So
it's detaching from that failure. It's detaching from sort of the risk. Like I always just say, for me, like one of those things are like in games, we just try things because we're like, damn, that's going to be cool. Like I'm going to jump off that cliff and see if I can make it to the other side. Am I going to die? Probably. But wouldn't it be cool if I can make it across and open that chest and get that Easter egg and get that armor, So having this sort of mentality of like, it could go bad, or maybe even most likely it will go bad, but I'm going to try anyway. Cause what if it goes good? Cause that feeling is priceless, right?
It's the best feeling in the world when you have a crazy idea and maybe everything is telling you to not do it or not go for it. And those are the demons that come up and try to pull you back into the simulation when you break out of that and just go for it. That's actually how we started Video Brothers, was that kind of mentality. We thought that making fun stuff for boring B2B companies, wouldn't that be cool if we could make that happen? And we put that out in the universe, and here we are. So I love that thought. That's so cool.
And I think I love that you were saying like breaking out of the simulation. So I think a great question. I really think you're living life as a game. And so how have you broken through the matrix, and how are you living life as a game? Like, what does looking at your life as a game mean to you personally?
My response when I jotted this down earlier, it means everything to me, to be honest with you. I think the important part of this mentality is like thinking about how everything you do affects other things in the world around you and the world you don't see. In any game, every decision has an impact, and some will be immediate impacts, short-term impacts, and some might be evident down the road, and some you might not even find out because it's changed something on the map. The other thing about it is life is not a single player game. This is a massive multiplayer universe. It's ever expanding. And if you can accept that you're just one of billions and billions of people playing and that your actions affect all. And I think that's like really cool to think about, is you have this big world, but if you just kind of accept that, it actually becomes smaller.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think when you're writing that, I was like, oh, there's this concept of allies in gaming. And as an entrepreneur, and like, I'm also like been a hardworking person my whole life. I always felt like I had to do everything by myself. And I don't know if that's because I'm Eastern European and, they're like, you have to do everything off the labor of your back and all that. So for a long time, I was struggling because I was just trying to do things by myself, but it really took me finding and discovering mentors in my life and having those people touch my life and help me grow and believe in me, giving me the courage now, even just like reaching out to you, or right now I'm in a really transitional period of my life, right? It's like reaching out to my network and just saying like, hey, this is sort of the things that I'm doing. Like, what's up with you? And you just never know what's going to come out for that. And I think we should really normalize like asking for help. And asking for help doesn't mean I need you to do me a favor, but it's like, hey, by the way, this is what I'm going through. Any insights? And the most beautiful thing about that is that 99% of the time, people are so excited to help you. Like most people want you to succeed. They're like, oh yeah, like, let me see how I can help you out. As long as you're a decent, you're a good human being, people are going to want to help you out. Right.
Sure. That ladders up to something I also wrote down, which is when you're playing the game of life, you're out there trying to earn points for yourself. I mean, that's just the reality, right? You got to put food on your table. You want to, if you want a family, you got to there's all those things you do for yourself, and those are selfish things, but they're not selfish things. It's like kind of that mentality. But how do you get points to the people around you? How can you help out with someone that needs a power up or some extra health points or that extra dose of magic? And, you're not alone here. So thinking like this is a single player thing is dangerous. You need to provide energy into the game to get the magic that you're looking for. And that comes with being just as much as asking people for help and advice and feedback and all that stuff. Like, ask people if they need help. And I think my world definitely flipped when I started being more helpful and thoughtful to others. It was like the energy comes straight back at you. And then that's a really great flywheel to keep you going. And again, you're going to get out what you put in. And that's not just about what you're doing for yourself. It's what you're doing for others. And you and I have both been there. We've been burned by people that we've helped and we've got nothing in return, but it's like, remove that expectation, maybe they're an NPC, they're a non-player character, and okay, that is what it is. You can't let that like bog you down. And that's why I do jump at the chance to help anybody out. When you reached out, I was like, hell yeah, I want to be on this thing. This sounds fun. Like, let's go. Let me know how I can help you, because it makes me feel good. And I know it makes you feel good. And together that's more positive energy going into this crazy thing we call life. And that's only going to make good things happen. Right. Yeah. So oh man, this is fun.
I love that. I love it. I'm all about creating a chain reaction of goodness in the world. We got to try, even if it's a smile or smiling at people, surprised. You're like, oh my God, someone smiled at me and said hello. Like, yeah, hello. You can start that way. Start small. So closing sort of remarks, Chandler, you've lived this amazing life. You're doing really cool stuff out there. What are the cheat codes? Tell the audience, okay? Give them some hints to sort of get ahead on their journeys.
Sure. Well, I'm so humbled. You're making me feel way cooler than I actually am. I'm going to have the best weekend being like, I wrote down 2 cheat codes. One is the game of life breaks the laws of physics. The more positive energy you put into it, the more you'll get back. You'll get more, right? So like in the universe, you put in 1, you get back 1. In life, I think you put in 2, you get back 4. And I think that's really something interesting to think about. And it's all that positive energy. And positive energy is worth a lot more than negative energy. And I think that the power of kindness, gratitude, it's like supercharging you in your ability to see the future. A lot of assholes go far in life.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. We all know some, and maybe we've been that person, right? In our past. And that's not a cheat code. To me, that's that short-term power up that's going to have some sort of downside.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like, people are going to be so sick of me at this point talking about positive energy, but honestly, that's the fuel that makes all this stuff work. If you can be kind, if you can help people out, you'll unlock the ability to have the energy of the world powering you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So my second cheat code is that I really want people to understand and believe. And if there's one thing you take away from this, like, I really believe that anybody can do anything. Everybody has value. Everybody has purpose. And the reality is, I think the universe, the majority of the world is playing on single player mode.
Yeah.
They don't care about anybody other than themselves. And if you can shed that ego and jump into the multiplayer arena where there's a lot more fun happening, I think you can do anything, and you will do anything.
Absolutely.
And I'm not one to like relish in my accomplishments at all. I don't even like think of them as such. I kind of just like, oh, all right, cool. But I do believe that, you know, if you believe that you can achieve, like, you really can do it. And I think people need to hear more of that, because in this climate, we're not, you know, there's not a whole lot of positive vibes going around. And I hope that comes back, because I think that's going to be how we get to a better future, is being more kind to each other, kind to ourselves, and all those things in between.
Well, this is what this podcast is all about. It's being kind to yourself, spreading that positive energy, kind of shamelessly believing in yourself. I think we need to do more of that. I need to do more of that. Even if you believe in yourself, you can go further, right? And things will just start unfurling for you. It sounds crazy. It sounds idealistic, but Chandler is a testimony that it's possible.
It is. And you know, the one thing that I think should be said too is thinking like this and being positive and everything, you know, there is a toll to it sometimes. And sometimes there is that slip back or that fall back where things maybe aren't going so well, or maybe you are, you know, maybe like your world got shaken up, or maybe there was something crazy, you know, like those things happen. And I think the more you kind of realize that you're in control, is you can get through those things a little bit easier. Like, just because you think life's a game doesn't make the rest of it super easy the whole time. And it's going to be all good luck and success from here. There's going to be downs. I mean, we could have a whole other podcast about all the downs I've been through. And I think just acknowledging it and, you know, understanding that it's part of the game, it's part of the journey is super important. So I also want people to feel if they're not aligning with this and they're kind of not feeling themselves, or they're feeling low, like, that's okay. That's normal. That's part of it. That's just the mud on the racetrack, and you go slow when you go through the mud when you're playing, you know, excite bike, you know, like that's what happens. So,
hey, I love that you brought that up, because I'm like spitting a lot of positivity, but every day I'm on a roller coaster. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to do all these new things. I've been in the stretch zone. I've been in the discomfort zone. I'm like constantly doubting myself. Even before this podcast, I was nervous. I will say it. I was like testing. I was practicing. I was like, okay, I don't want to mess this up. But I think it's important for people to remember their reason for playing the game. What is like your reason for living? What is your reason for playing the game? And it doesn't even have to be like a big, you know, you don't have to be Oprah Winfrey, right? It could be something, I want to spread more joy, or I want to love my family. What is your North Star? Really lock on to that and remember it, because that'll help you navigate and regulate as you're going through those down periods. And the down period can be, sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's hours, sometimes it's a week, sometimes a couple of years. I went through a down period for a really long time, and I really had to come out of the dirt, the crud, and remember, what is my reason for playing? why am I here in this world, right? And for me, it's creating a chain reaction of goodness in the world, right? Like alleviating suffering. Like that's for me. It doesn't have to be that for you, but I'm like, I will not rest, and I'm not going to let anything get the best of me, because I'm here for this reason. And even if it's like one person at a time that I'm transforming or helping, then that makes my life worth living, So just remember your reason for playing.
Oh man, that's beautiful stuff for sure. I'm so glad you brought that up too. I think there's so much to this conversation that a lot of people will think about and just reflect on, and I'd love to talk about it more some other time with you. It's just this is
Oh
really
yeah.
cool stuff. Yeah.
I see a part 2 coming up, and I see some future collabs. I don't know how or where, but I just love the energy between us. So super
Yeah.
excited for what's to
Yeah.
come.
Sign me up for that. I'm so down. And don't you just love that like divine inspiration where you're like,
Yes.
wow, like there's more we could talk about. There's more we could do. We have fun, bubbly personalities. And like
Yes.
I think there's something to it, So
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a side quest together.
I'm so down. I'm so down for that. That's awesome.
So thank you so much, Chandler, for joining me, for saying hell yeah, not just yes, but saying hell yeah and having this amazing conversation. I think everyone's going to have a good time and benefit from it. And everybody, please make sure to check out Video Brothers. Chandler and his partner are doing some really cool, cutting edge, hilarious stuff on LinkedIn that is totally worth investing in and definitely worth watching.
Oh man, you're the best. I appreciate that. And I tell this to everybody on every podcast. I'm here for everybody. Send me a note, send me a message, find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help you in any way I can. That's what I'm all about. So don't be a stranger. Say hello. I appreciate it, and it makes the world go around. So
And he means it.
I do. I do. My schedule's not happy about it, but I make it work.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Chandler.
Of course.